The largest funder of Al-Shabaab is the Minnesota Taxpayer. This out of a new report from the City Journal, from Ryan Thorpe and Christopher Rufo. Good journalists with a track record here in the state of Minnesota for actual journalism. The article itself is pretty long, and honestly, I'm not going to get into it in this video. I am going to do a follow-up video on this. I've kind of struggled on how to bring this forward and basically how to talk about it. Not because of the community. I couldn't care less about what the Somali community thinks. The issue is, how the hell is this state ever going to be fixed? And I've come to a conclusion that it isn't. It just isn't. Let me explain why. Because Minneapolis, Hennepin, and Ramsey County exist. The vast majority of Minnesota is a very, very red state. The large cities and the suburbs. Now, I know this is the way across the nation. I get it. But you also have, in that city, a community who's taking advantage of frankly, the stupidity and white guilt that goes along with being a Minnesotan. If you're not from here, you don't understand the liberal white guilt that pervades the metropolitan areas. Just want to bring up one little part of this. In many cases, the fraud has been perpetrated by members of Minnesota's sizable Somali community. Federal counterterrorism sources confirm that millions of dollars have been stolen in funds that have been sent back to Somalia, where they ultimately landed in the hands of the group Al-Shabaab. As one confidential source put it, the largest funder of Al-Shabaab is the Minnesota Taxpayer. Our investigation shows what happens when a tribal mindset meets a bleeding heart bureaucracy, when imported clan loyalties collide with a political class too timid to offend, and when the exact accusations of racism are cynically deployed to shield the behavior, the predictable result is that taxpayers foot the bill. Because Minnesota politicians are pussies and cowards. Minnesotans, by nature, seem to be pussies and cowards. Specifically the ones who go through the failed academy of higher education. It seems the higher up in education you get, the dumber you get. And if Minnesota is known for one thing, it's simping for higher education. Half of this state's budget, that isn't going to fraud, goes to the fraud of higher education and basic education in this state, who is essentially turning out what are retards. Essentially retards, going out into the world, feeling guilty for being who they are, guilty for the sins of their fathers. By the way, Minnesota, a free state, joined the Union as a free state, fought in the Civil War on the side of the Union, never had institutions like that. Bent over forwards. We're not going to say backwards. Minnesotans bend over forwards and grab the ankles for every group that comes by with their hand out. And have done so for generations. Previous generations have decided to assimilate. We now have a large group who do not even want to. They have, as said here in this article, clan loyalties. Clan loyalties. One of the things that separates America from the rest of the world is that we dropped this clan loyalty bullshit at the border. It stopped. After assimilation, it stopped. Irish recognized Irish, Italian and recognized Italian, Polish, Polish, German, German, French, French, so on and so forth, etc. Ad infinitum. But now we have a group in the Somali community who has no desire to assimilate. None. Their loyalties are to clans thousands of miles away and who have no problem ripping off the stupid dupes in this state who run the state specifically in St. Paul. And that's part of this deal too. The state has, like I said, the state can't be saved. In my upcoming videos, I'm going to cover this a little bit in depth, leading to my solution. It's just going to be a couple videos. One, I want to go through this article. Just to show the rampant stupidity of the highly educated dolts who run this state. These are the most educated idiots on the planet. I also want to go through what I do think is really the only solution. I really only see one solution. And that's the dissolution of this state. And I've been saying this for a while, and I know I'm just a fool. I'm an idiot. Who gives a shit what I think? I want to save the Union, and I think the only way to save the Union is the redivision of state borders. St. Paul does not represent me. It also doesn't represent a vast majority of the people of western and southern and northwestern Minnesota. And I'm going to bring proof of that in the upcoming videos. My solution is literally the dissolution of the state of Minnesota. The Twin Cities and Duluth and Rochester and the Eastern Corridor. Y'all want this crap? Fine. Pay for it. Live with it. Let them rule you. Let Sharia law inevitably be brought into Minnesota statute, which you know it will be. Eventually, Sharia law will be part of Minnesota statute. It's not like we're already bending over, doing everything we can to make you feel accommodated. Right now, the total is at $1.3 billion in fraud discovered. That's as of right now. That's just as of right now. U.S. Attorney Joseph Thompson has said, quote, "This is just the tip of the iceberg. $1.3 billion. Is this all state funding? No. Part of it's federal. So this is a national issue. The president came out last night and retracted the special community status of the Somali community a year ahead of schedule. I think that's good. I think that's good. As a start. As a start. There's another thing that needs to be seriously thought of here. Yep. That's where we're at. We need to start actually kicking people out. Your loyalty isn't to here. Your loyalty is to somewhere else. And we can prove it financially, morally, and legally. Disillusion in the state of Minnesota. Because the taxpayers are funding this shit. Now, I wanted to make this quick. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on this today because I have to go to work in just a few minutes because, hey, who's going to fund Al-Shabaab except the Minnesota taxpayers? That's me. There's so much frustration I have with this. I was raging yesterday evening when I first read this story as a taxpayer, as somebody who actually gets hassled by the state of Minnesota because he actually pays taxes, who sends in checks written with my own hand to the state of Minnesota. Now I knew I was funding all this bullshit programs that the liberals, which I hated. I hated funding it. And I want tax cuts, and I don't want to have to be paying for this. But to find out that I'm paying for groups that are actively killing Americans, American soldiers, American people, committing these crimes, these atrocities in Somalia and East Africa, globally, no. And here's the cherry on the top. If you're still listening, Tim Walz is running for a third term as governor. The son of a bitch is leading in the polls. All this fraud happened under his watch. And he's leading in the polls. This is why the dissolution of Minnesota is really the only answer. Because he won't campaign outside the Twin Cities. He doesn't have to. But the people outside the Twin Cities have to do something. Because we're also paying for this shit. Like I said, this is just going to be the first in a couple of videos about this subject. This is obscene. It's so bad. The fraud is so bad. It's so pervasive that really the only solution is to start over. Let the Twin Cities and the Somalis have it. The eastern corridor of Minnesota is yours. Let us leave and form East Dakota. You guys can have Minnesota. Let us form East Dakota and get the fuck away from you. Thank you.